Okay, chapter 1.5 is about adding and subtracting real numbers. I'm not even going to try to act as if we don't have calculators in our hands, but I do want to make sure that we understand that this topic is very necessary or important to us in the future. Again, I understand how the following lesson seems unnecessary because we have calculators, but remember that we need to actually understand how things work without calculators so that our actual number sense is going to be strong enough to make good decisions. Adding and subtracting integers is the same exact process except for one thing. Subtracting requires us to do what we call adding of the opposite. I'm going to show you that right now. In a subtraction problem, what I'm going to teach you is that anytime you have a minus sign in between two numbers, that what we are going to do instead of seeing this as 8 minus 4 is we are going to see this as 8 plus the opposite, so it's going to be 8 plus a negative 4. Again, if it comes down to something where you have to make a decision, just do plus the opposite, and that way we can break it down that way. 9 minus negative 2, I'm going to recommend, again, this is a minus sign, so plus the opposite would now be 9 plus a positive 2. Negative 3 minus negative 6 plus the opposite is going to be negative 3 plus positive 6. If we begin to view these problems as just combinations of positive and negative numbers being added, then it's easy for me to help you understand how this stuff works. And so again, we're going to kind of use that idea as we go through. Now, I will tell you before I continue reading that some teach with number lines, others teach with all kinds of things, but it all comes down to the same thing of just understanding how positive and negative numbers relate whenever you add them. So what I'm going to do now is illustrate how they actually combine through addition using pennies and dimes. This is the only exposure that you actually need to understand, and the rest will just come with practice. So what we're going to do in this situation is assign pennies as positive, since they both start with a P, and then we're going to assign negatives as dimes. So if we have this problem here, we have negative 3 plus 8. That is a negative 3, so that means we have 3 dimes. This feels like Sesame Street here. Plus 8, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Got a lot of money here. 5, 6, 7, 8. So you've got 3 pennies, I hope, on the screen, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dimes. What happens whenever you have two things of opposite signs is that every time you take a step forward and a step back, it is honestly just a canceling tactic. So those two cancel out, and then these two combine and they cancel out, and then these two combine and they cancel out, and what we end up with is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pennies. Pennies, remember, being positive, it means that our answer is a positive 5. I'm going to stop there, and not stop, but I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll come back and talk about why in just a second. But again, when you put 3 negatives with 8 positives, you end up with 5 positives. That's your answer. Looking at another one. Sorry, my sheets are all stuck together. Negative 2 plus negative 6. Again, negative 2 means that we have 2 dimes combining with 6 dimes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, we've got negative 2 over here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 6 over here. And what happens is nothing cancels. And because nothing cancels, that means that we are just going to take all these dimes and push them together to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dimes, which means that our answer is negative 8. Again, I'm going to just kind of let that sit for a minute, and we'll talk about why it happened in just a second. But for right now, that is what we did with our pennies and our dimes. 6 plus negative 9. Again, 6 would be a positive 6 because there's no sign in front of it, so we assume positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Plus negative 9, which would be 9 dimes. I'll just do this off to the side. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So here in this picture we have our 6 pennies, which is our positive 6, our 9 dimes, which is our negative 9. And what I told you is that anytime you have two opposite symbols on the same problem, these two cancel. Those two cancel. Those two cancel. Those two cancel. Those two cancel. And these two cancel, leaving us 3 dimes or negative 3. And then the last one I want to do really isn't adding anymore, but it's got the signs on it, which is 5 minus negative 6. And again, because that's minus, we don't really know how to subtract. So what we're going to do for our common sense is make that a plus. And so what we end up with is 5 pennies, 3, 4, 5, and 6 pennies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, when you put these two things on the table together, notice that nothing is opposite. Nothing's going to eliminate, which means we take and push everything together, getting 11 pennies as our answer. Again, a positive 11 because it's 11 pennies. Alright, so considering what just happened in these situations, again, I don't think we need the pennies and dimes. That's really a lot of work, but if you ever need to, I would just put pluses and minuses to represent them. But considering, think about what happened when the coins were the same. In other words, whenever I had positives over here and positives over there, nothing canceled. So what did we do with those things? We actually added those amounts. And because everything was positive, our answer was positive. What happened when we had negatives over here, like the dimes on this side and the dimes on this side? Again, because nothing was negative, we actually added them up. So in this case, if we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negatives, then you added to make 11, but our answer was negative. And so what happens is, because everything was the same, nothing eliminated, so we took and pushed the groups together. So in other words, whenever the signs are the same, as long as there's no conflict, we are going to add the two numbers to make a bigger number. The difference is, if they're all positives on the table, then your answer should be positives. If there are only negatives on the table, then our answer would be negative. The thing you have to understand, which is really this part is easy after a while. Actually, it's the easiest part to get. The part you have to understand is what happens when the coins are different. What happens when I have some pluses over here and some minuses over here? What happens when I have this many pluses over here and only this many minuses over here? There's two different situations you have to consider. And again, how do you know which sign is going to prevail? Well, based off of the fact that this group is bigger, that means your answer should be negative. Based off of the fact that this group is bigger, that means that this answer should be positive. And then when you think about it, all you really did was subtract. So let me bring those questions back real fast. You had negative 3 plus 8. They don't like each other, so you subtract. 8 minus 3 is 5, and it should be a positive 8. Or positive because the fact that 8 is bigger, so that's where you got your positive 5 from. If you look at the one here, 6 plus negative 9, again the signs were different, so we subtract. 9 minus 6 as a group is 3. But because 9 is negative, you end up with a negative 3. For those of you who are in sports, you could say your team scored 6, their team scored 9. Guess what? You lost by 3. Or you could say, if positive is good, their team scored 3, your team scored 8, you won by 5. Whatever it is, you need to find some way to understand it. But in terms of your calculator, it's not really that hard. You just type in exactly what you see, and by exactly, I mean exactly. If you see parentheses, type a parentheses. The negative button, even on your calculator, is underneath the 3, so you would just simply type negative 3 plus 8 and get your answer. You would type negative 2 plus parentheses negative 6, and you get your negative 8. You would type your 6 plus parentheses negative 9 and get your negative 3. So that's why I said I don't overlook the fact that your calculators are going to be able to do a lot of work for you, but what I need you to understand is that until you understand what's going on, you're not going to get as far as you should get. Where am I at now? I think I just lost my place. Let's see. Hold on. Illustrated, yes. Okay. It says, if you find some way to connect these ideas, then it is not so tough to use our own common sense when adding and subtracting integers. Again, the point is not to be able to get it with your calculator because that makes you very dependent. You want to be able to look and make sure your answer makes sense. So thinking through these real fast, because we don't have enough pennies and dimes for this, if you see something that says negative 100 plus 40, your first thought is this group going to get bigger or smaller? And that's all you have to think. Is this group going to get bigger or smaller? One group is negative, the other group is positive. It should get smaller, which means we need to subtract. Ignore the signs. Just know there's 100 of these and 40 of these, and they're opposites. 100 minus 40 is 60. But here's the thing. There are more negatives in the group, which means your answer should be negative 60. And you want to start to try to do that, and then just check yourself later. So negative 100 plus 40, check for yourself, is negative 60. That is how you want to do that. All right? If you saw negative 19 minus 56, again, first I'm going to say, in order to think through this, I'm going to do plus the opposite. So I have 19 negatives and 56 negatives. If I have these two on the table together, the question is this group going to get bigger or smaller? And because the signs are the same, they're going to get bigger, which means all I'm going to do is add them up. 19 plus 56, I believe, is 75. But again, all of these are negatives on the table, which means it should be a negative 75. And again, what you should do after you kind of think through it is use your calculator to say negative 19 minus 56, exactly what they had there, and check for yourself to see your answer matches. That's how you get better. Alright. Negative 28 minus negative 6. Again, I don't like minus, so I'm going to do plus the opposite. This gives us negative 28 and positive 6. The first question you should ask yourself, is this going to get bigger or smaller? The signs are different, which means they don't like each other. There's going to be some canceling going on, so it's going to get smaller. If it's getting smaller, I subtract by ignoring the signs. Bigger minus smaller. 28 minus 6 is 22. But what is there more of? And there are more negatives, which means it should be a negative 22. Again, take your calculator. Negative 28 minus parentheses negative 6. Type in exactly the way it is, and make sure your thoughts connect to what it's supposed to. And then even in 16 minus 20, plus the opposite, because I'm using common sense here, 16 plus a negative 20 means that we are going to have what, a smaller group, because the signs are different. So 20 minus 16 is 4. And because there are more 20s, or more negatives, we're going to have a negative. And again, 16 minus 20 is negative 4. You are about to get a worksheet. Let's see if I can get it. And it's similar to yesterday. And again, people asked me yesterday, is this homework, or am I supposed to hand this in, or whatever it might be? The bottom line is this. I'm giving you this worksheet because it has good practice problems on it. Find each sum. You want to work them out. The ones that are a little tough, just use your calculator and make sure you know how to find the answer. You have find the difference, which again means plus the opposite. You have some word problems that you might possibly see on Friday. And you have even things with expressions and variables in it. If you are skipping these things just because you don't feel like doing them, what's going to happen on one of these quizzes, it may not be this one, but I'm doing this to try to get you, used to it. But there's going to be some word problems. There's going to be a lot of word problems on your work this year, so don't skip over these things. Just find some time, work them out. You've got a whole week, or actually you've got until the test pops up, but you've got at least a whole week to try to get around to this. I know you don't have homework, but it doesn't mean that you can't at least look at one problem and just try to see if you can figure it out. Alright? So, now that we hopefully have an understanding to build on, it's time to rely on patience and experience. Again, this skill is not mastered in days. I've been doing this for years. It takes months to get used to it. But if you are a person who relies on a calculator for 90% of your computations, it's going to take years. You have to learn to trust yourself first, like I did, and then just use the calculator to check. If you miss it, at least you know where your weaknesses are. Again, as long as you are thinking through it, then your power to think and your power to choose will increase. Other than that, grab the worksheet, and again, make sure you are working on your worksheet. I have people who are starting to play games and use their time unwisely. Please don't do that, because you're going to mess up and have your grade drop or have something negative happen to you. Make sure you do your job while you're in class. Either you should be working together, working alone, or asking for help from me or someone around you. So other than that, good luck, and it's a short day, so make sure you make the most of it.